going to hear a student, Ben, talking to two other students and his tutor in a tutorial. First, look at questions 1 to 7. Now listen and complete the notes by filling in the numbered spaces 1 to 3 and labelling the diagram 4 to 7.
Oh, OK, come on in. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Hello, Mark, Sally. Now, let's get going, shall we, because we've got a lot of ground to cover this afternoon. It's Ben's turn to give his tutorial paper today. But remember, we do encourage questions from the rest of you, so do try to join in and ask questions.
OK.
Now, I believe Ben's going to talk to us today about the exploration of the Red Planet.
That's right. I'm going to be looking at the recent landing by the Americans of a spacecraft on the planet Mars, and in particular focusing on the small rover robot.
Is that the little robot that functions as a geologist?
Yes, that's right. It's called a rover, like a Land Rover, I suppose, and it can detect the geological composition of the ground it's standing on, so, yes, it's a sort of geologist. It's actually quite amazing.
I heard it described as being like a microwave oven on wheels.
Yeah. Well, from an appearance point of view, that's a fair description. I've photocopied a picture of it for you so that you can keep this for reference and make some notes, and I'll just hand that out now.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks. Wow. You'd actually expect it to look more space-age than this, wouldn't you? Like, more sophisticated?
OK, well, as you can see, it's quite small. It actually only weighs 16.5 kilograms.
Right. And what kind of speed is it capable of, Ben?
Well, I suppose that depends on the terrain. But I understand that it has a top speed of 2.4 kilometres an hour, which isn't very fast, really.
And can you tell us how it works? Explain some of these things we can see here.
Well, first of all, on the top it's fitted with solar panels. It runs on solar energy, of course.
Does that mean it can't work at night?
Yes, indeed it does. I guess it sleeps at night. So, you have the solar panels on the top, and underneath, this is the part known as the warm box.
What's the purpose of that?
Well, at night, the temperatures on Mars can go below 100 degrees, so the warm box is designed to protect the electronics from the extreme cold. It's also fitted with 2 cameras on the front.
OK. And what about its wheels?
It's got 6 aluminium wheels, each 13 centimetres in diameter. Each one has its own motor, so it's individually powered, which allows the vehicle to turn on the spot if necessary. And, as you know, aluminium is very light.
Now look at questions 8 to 10. Listen to the end of the conversation and complete the notes by filling in numbered spaces 8 to 10.
And how is it steered?
Good question. It's steered using virtual reality goggles, worn by someone back on Earth, believe it or not. Though, because the robot can't be manipulated in real time, it can't be steered in real time either.
What do you mean exactly?
Well, you see, it takes more than 11 minutes for a radio signal to travel from command headquarters in California to Mars, and another 11 minutes for the answer to come back.
You mean there's a time delay?
Yes, exactly. And the time delay, or time lag, means it can't be steered directly from Earth. So what they do is this. They photograph the area around the rover, and the scientists will decide where they want the rover to go.
In other words, they'll plot a course for the rover.
Exactly.
OK, Ben, that's very interesting. Now, can you tell us anything about this space mission itself, and why Mars?
Well, people have been fascinated by Mars for a long time, and it's generally believed that Mars is the only other planet in the solar system to have abundant water.
Is it possible that people might one day be able to live on Mars?
Well, of course, there's a lot of work to be done yet, but theoretically, I can't see why not.
Thanks, Ben. That was very interesting.
Section 2. You are going to hear a radio interview about giving up smoking. First, look at questions 11 to 13. As you listen to the first part of the interview, answer questions 11 to 13. For these questions, there are 4 alternatives: A, B, C, and D. Decide which alternative is the most suitable answer and circle the correct letter.
And now, let's hear what Mr. Gold has to say about kicking the habit of smoking. It was connected with wanting to change your life and your desire to become an actor. Is that right, Mr. Gold?
Yes.
So, can you tell our listeners a bit more about how you managed to give up?
Well, I enrolled on a variety of evening courses where I found I wasn't able to do the warm-up sessions. Bending down to touch my toes made me breathless. Even though I hated to admit it, the problem wasn't so much my sitting around all the time, but my 15 to 20 a day smoking habit. If I'd been able to limit myself to 3 or 4 cigarettes a day, there'd have been no problem, but I was seriously addicted. And I'm talking about waking up at 3 a.m. dying for a cigarette, or, in the days before 24-hour shopping, driving across London at night to buy a packet of cigarettes when I ran out. But above all, my addiction meant making sure I never ran out, at the expense of everything else, including necessities.
So, what did you do?
The thought of all my past attempts to give up just wouldn't go away. This was something that had constantly been on my mind, especially first thing in the morning with the chest pains, coughing fits and headaches, not to mention the frequent colds and throat infections. But I couldn't imagine life without smoking. I also enjoyed my life, but the thing I longed for most was to escape the trap of a job I was bored with. I knew what I wanted, and I understood something else too. This time, I was going to keep my little plan a secret.
Now look at questions 14 to 20. As the interview continues, complete the sentences. Write no more than 3 words for each answer.
On the 1st of July, I managed to get through 24 hours without a single cigarette. The next day, I got to 48 hours. Then I aimed for 100, 500, 1,000. Easy. It was my own little private game, and I was winning it. If anyone mentioned they hadn't seen me smoking, I simply said I was cutting down. I had to be sure of success. Eventually, a month passed, and I felt safe enough to come out. I'd lost count of the number of hours I'd gone without a cigarette. All I suffered was a couple of bad headaches, and then I was set for my most healthy year ever. Not one single cold for over 12 months. I now realise that the secret of my success was to look upon this as an exciting adventure, a way of helping me to become an actor. And because nobody knew what I was up to, I never once feared the accusation of having no willpower if I failed. With the right attitude, the whole thing turned out to be a lot easier than expected. I finally did get into much better physical shape, go to drama school, and become a professional actor.
Very interesting indeed. I'm sure we all wish we had Mr. Gold's determination. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gold. And I hope our listeners will learn from the experience you and our other guests have talked to us about today, and perhaps find their own road to success.
That's the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3.
Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You are going to hear a conversation among Dr. Archer, Larry, and Judy, talking about the new term. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and complete the notes and table below.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the new term. I hope you've all had a good break and that you're keen to start on your research project. What I'd like to do this morning is to give you a chance to ask questions about the project, requirements, ways of approach, how to get help if you need it. Today is informal. It may be already written on paper, but it's nice to have an opportunity to have it confirmed. So, any questions?
Dr. Archer, is there a confirmed due date yet to hand it in?
Yes, I can now confirm that it's 16th of July, not 15th, as first advised. Okay?
And what about the word limit?
Well, there is some flexibility on this, but in general it's 8 to 10,000 words.
Ah, I see.
And you can choose your topic, anything from years 2 and 3. Yes?
I still can't work out what I want to do it on.
In that case, you should see your course tutor to agree on your final topic, and you should also be aware that there is special assistance available at the library on library resources if you need help on that.
Can I just check on the deadlines for everything?
Certainly. Look, let me write it on the board when each stage should be completed. First of all, you've got to work on your basic project outline, and that's due in to your course tutor by 21st of February, which is only 2 weeks away, so you need to get cracking on that.
Do we have to include a full reference list by then too?
No, your reference list is due on 6th of April, which is 1 week later, so you have time to discuss this with your tutor.
And when should we be doing the research?
Well, that's over a 1-month period, essentially April to May.
And the write-up?
Well, you need to do quite a bit of research before you get going on your writing, so that's really May to July, with a due date for handing in on the 16th. Any more questions?
Now look at questions 27 to 30. Listen to the second part of the talk and match A, B, or C with questions 27 to 30.
Well, sir, just some advice really. It's about the research approach. Would you advise us to use some case studies?
Well, Larry, I know these can be difficult to arrange sometimes, but I really feel they are of great benefit in this subject. You can always talk to your tutor if you're having difficulty. Yes?
I've looked over some previous research projects that are in the library.
Is that a good idea, sir? I heard...
Okay. I don't think you should go through them in detail, especially at this early stage, or you might end up being influenced by them more than you realise. But yes, it really is about the best guide you can have to what's required to what's expected in this type of project.
Sorry, Judy, I butted in on you.
That's all right. It's just that I noticed one project was a joint one. They worked together as a pair. Is that a good idea?
Yes, I remember that paper. Working in a pair can have some advantages, but to be frank, this is meant to be an individual project, so it's best to work on your own.
About using subjects, is it okay if we use family members?
Your own relatives? I don't see why not. They probably offer some advantages in terms of availability, although you need to guard against possible effects on your research outcomes. So, you can if you want. Perhaps you should discuss this with your tutor if you plan to use relatives, so you can approach it in the best way.
Okay, thanks.
Okay then. Well, I hope we've been able to sort out a few things. You're welcome to see me at any time, or drop me a note if you have any more queries.
Fine, thanks.
This is the end of Section 3. Now you have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Test 1, Section 4. You will hear an environmental studies student giving a presentation about his project on saving an endangered species of plant. Now you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
For my presentation, I'm going to summarise what I've found out about efforts to save one plant species, the juniper bush. It once flourished in Britain and throughout the world's temperate zones, but over the last few decades has declined considerably. Before I go on to explain the steps being taken to save it in England, let me start by looking at some background information and why the juniper has been so important in cultural as well as ecological terms, historically and in the present day. Firstly, I want to emphasise the fact that juniper is a very ancient plant. It has been discovered that it was actually amongst the first species of plants to establish itself in Britain in the period following the most recent Ice Age. And, as I say, it has a much valued place in British culture. It was used widely as a fuel during the Middle Ages because when burnt, the smoke given off is all but invisible, and so any illicit activities involving fire could go on without being detected. For example, cooking game hunted illegally. It also has valuable medicinal properties. Particularly during large epidemics, oils were extracted from the juniper wood and sprayed in the air to try to prevent the spread of infection in hospital wards. And these days, perhaps its most well-known use is in cuisine, cooking, where its berries are a much valued ingredient, used to flavour a variety of meat dishes and also drinks. Turning now to ecological issues, juniper bushes play an important role in supporting other living things. If juniper bushes are wiped out, this would radically affect many different insect and also fungus species. We simply cannot afford to let this species die out. So, why is the juniper plant declining at such a rapid rate? Well, a survey conducted in the north and west of Britain in 2004-5 showed that a major problem is the fact that in present-day populations, ratios between the sexes are unbalanced, and without a proper mix of male and female, bushes don't get pollinated. Also, the survey found that in a lot of these populations, the plants are the same age. So this means that bushes grow old and start to die at similar times, leading to swift extinction of whole populations. Now, the charity Plant Life is trying to do something to halt the decline in juniper species. It's currently trying out 2 new major salvage techniques, this time focusing on lowland regions of England. The first thing it's trying is to provide shelters for the seedlings in areas where juniper populations are fairly well established. These, of course, are designed to help protect the plants at their most vulnerable stage. A further measure is that in areas where colonies have all but died out, numbers are being bolstered by the planting of cuttings which have been taken from healthy bushes elsewhere. Now, I hope I've given a clear picture of the problems facing this culturally and ecologically valuable plant, and of the measures being taken by Plant Life to tackle them. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.